Hey guys, welcome to The Grey Escape. I'm Natalie Gray, and guess what? Because you're listening to this show right now, I get to give you a free international money transfer. I can't supply the money, I wish I could, but I can supply the free, as in no fees for international money transfers up to £2,000. That's around 3,000 US dollars. And you can transfer any currency to any currency, any amount you want. And if it's under £2,000, it's going to be free. I just used this company to send money overseas. Not only was it super fast, I saved over $200 in the exchange rate over what other companies would have charged, including PayPal. So if you want to save nearly 90% over other currency transfer companies, go to thegreyescape.com/cash for this exclusive offer just for my listeners, where you can send up to £2,000 or equivalent for free. Go to thegreyescape.com/cash and send some money internationally today. Well, I think we better get on with the show. I'll tell you all about it right after this. So, first things first, this episode is being recorded today at Pinewood Studios, England. This is where they make almost all of the Bond movies and all the new Star Wars films. Well, since they make movies here, it can sometimes get a bit noisy, because you know, all that making stuff up and pretending to be stuff, it's a pretty loud business. And I'm just in an office, not a fancy soundstage. So, if for a brief moment in this show, you hear some kind of movie studio shenanigans, like banging or thumping or like alien sound or something, don't stress out, because it'll just be quick. So, who am I speaking with today? Canadian electronic musician turned sound scientist, now living in Switzerland, Pier Rubessa. And why am I having Pier Rubessa on the show? Well, first of all, he was referred by brilliant author and speaker Anthony Peake. You remember that guy from those holographic episodes a while back? You guys love those. I got the feedback, and those are popular episodes. Well, when Anthony Peake says, oh, you need to meet this guy, you have to meet him. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know much about Pier Rubessa, but what I do know is that if you've heard me speak about my extraordinary experience in 2012, what happened to this guy makes my experience look like I took a nap. Pierre's experience is literally out of this world. Extraordinary, extraordinary, extraterrestrial? What? Who? I'm not giving spoilers. You're going to have to wait. And a heads up, this is a two-parter. Pierre's daughter Nina is also sitting in, so you may hear some Nina banter along with some possible movie-making shenanigans. Here's sound scientist and man who experienced something truly fantastical. Hashtag extraterrestrial. Hashtag what? Hashtag frequencies and vibrations. I'm excited. Pier Rubessa.
At the age of 10, my parents forced me to study piano. So my first instrument was the piano. And I went to the conservatory, started with the conservatory music classes. And then something very special happened at the age of 13. Ooh. I had one of those aha moments, you know. I was in a school orchestra. And, well, let me just back up a little bit.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
You know, I was one of those kids that in grade 8, it was the end of May. I remember this day. It was very clear to me. For 2 years in music class, we had covered music history. So ancient music and Baroque music, classical music, modern music, romantic music, contemporary music.
Sounds like a pretty fancy school. I don't remember covering all that music in my grade 8 in Canada. We were playing Star Wars. I mean, seriously, it was movie theme tunes was our level of music instruction.
This was before Star Wars. So this one particular day, the subject was contemporary electronic music.
Pet Shop Boys.
So
This was before the Pet Shop Boys, I know.
Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, Pierre Boulez, Edgar Varese. These were the grandfathers of electronic music. The first modern composers who actually used electronics to make music. They would record natural instruments and they would distort them, they would filter them, they would play them backwards, they would mix live instruments with electronics. This was the era before computers also, so everything was very archaic. We used oscillators.
What year are we talking here?
Here we're speaking about 1972, 73.
So not too long before Star Wars.
Not too long, no.
5 or 6 years, right? Well, yeah, that's about right. 4 or 5 years.
A lot of things happened in those 4 or 5 years. When I first heard this music, there was a lamp that lit up in my head. I can still, if I close my eyes, I can still see it. I can see this light. It was a very particular light. And there was a voice that came to me and said to me, Pierre, this is what you are going to do for the rest of your life. And I went, yes, I found my calling.
Wow.
From that day on, I had just turned 13. From that day on, the only thing that interested me was electronic music.
Wow. Now, had you had any other voices in your head giving messages or?
No.
So didn't that freak you out a little bit that you heard a voice in your head?
I thought it was peculiar, but I didn't think twice about it.
Okay. You were just happy it had a good
wow,
message.
Look at this light. There's a voice.
You might have questioned it more if it said, do your homework.
Yes, probably.
But hey, do electronic music.
Do electronic music.
There's no complaints there.
Okay. Why not?
Okay.
So when I came home that day, you know what the first thing I did?
Compose something, I would think.
I took my Liberace records and I put them in the trash.
Ah.
Because he was my hero right up until that point. Fantastic piano player, entertainer, performer. And I started to seek out electronic music. My first album was Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. And I just wanted to listen to the production, to the sounds, to the way that these sounds were crafted, and the hours and the weeks and the months that were spent in the studio by artists back then. We don't have that today. We load up some samples, we load up some backtracks, and we push the button, and voila, everything is done within a couple of hours. But this was an era where crafting sound was an art.
Yeah, like alchemy, right?
It was, indeed. I mean, there were entire techniques and of recording, and bands would go out into the forest to record. They would go into old churches. They would take microphones and they would mount them on spinning wheels. So as they were recording guitar solos and vocals, these microphones would be spinning through the air just to get the effect.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore today.
You just do a digital slider.
Yes. So, a little bit music crafting, sound crafting has lost its tactile aspect. Okay, we have tactile sliders and touch screens today. But it's not quite the same. It was really fun to hook things up in old warehouses and buildings and elevator shafts and so on to record.
Well, you had to be truly inventive to come up with a new sound back then.
Yes.
You had to use your creativity to do those things.
It was a very creative process. Not only that, it was a highly technical process because you had to run cables and power cables, and if you had to have an amplifier down an elevator shaft, this took some engineering prowess to be able to actually achieve this. And so it was an era where we invented ways to create sounds that we could imagine. We were very inventive, building objects, building interfaces, building special rooms to record these sounds.
Can I just say, it kind of mirrors also what George Lucas would have been doing at the time.
Absolutely.
The same thing in filmmaking.
Absolutely.
Doing things that hadn't been done before, being extremely creative with how he was shooting things to blow people's minds with what he achieved.
Absolutely. In fact, for Star Wars, the soundtrack on Star Wars, George Lucas developed his own sound production system, which eventually then was marketed as a sound production tool, because the technology just was not available at the time to be able to do the types of manipulations that were needed or that were imagined by directors, by artists, by producers, which required a lot of technology, a lot of technology.
Now, I know that very little about you, but I know that in your life is something extremely fantastical. So I know you'll be telling me this for a reason, this electronic music background. How does it progress that somehow that's been a significant part of this fantastical story?
This is the backstory. This is the context. My instrument was the synthesizer. I started to study electronic music at the age of 13. And we didn't have computers back then. Personal computers were not invented yet. Synthesizers were available. And what is a synthesizer? It is a very sophisticated piece of electronic equipment that allows us to shape every aspect of sound. And we take it one step further. What is sound? Sound is vibration.
Now you're talking.
Vibration.
Now you're talking my language.
And how do we get this vibration? We get this vibration by manipulating energy, force and frequency and amplitude and information and wave shape and time and space. Because sound is a mechanical manifestation of energy. What does it do? It moves molecules. The reason we hear sound is because we hear molecules colliding together, which we eventually perceive as sound. As sound passes through not only the air, but sound can travel through wood, through metal, through stone, through glass, through the human body. The phenomena is the same. As the sound wave penetrates through a block of wood, through a table, through a window, it moves the entire molecular structure in time and in space. This is key. This is a key element. So shaping energy with the controls in a synthesizer allowed me really to understand and laid the foundation for what was to become and is still part of my life's work.
Right. Just out of curiosity, which synthesizer did you get?
My very first synthesizer was a Roland SH5.
I was going to ask if it was Roland or Korg were going to be my two guesses. And did you stay loyal to Roland?
Yes, I did for a long time. I still have a classic Roland, one of their most advanced analog digital hybrid synthesizers from 1990, 92. I stopped collecting synthesizers pretty well, mid-90s.
Have you got any Korg in there? I'm a bit of a Korg fan, I'll be honest, yeah. The strings. Come on, Pierre, the strings.
No, that's true. They had good strings. That's true. That's true. I was more into the exotic machines. Okay. The Fairlight, the PPG.
Oh, right.
I had a PPG with the expansion module and the terminal. I had a Fairlight.
Well, the Fairlight, wasn't that like, because I remember the big press on that was that Kate Bush had bought a Fairlight.
Kate Bush, Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, wasn't it like $150,000?
Yes,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's astonishing. So you had one of those?
Yes.
Wow. So you must have been making some money off of your electronic music shenanigans.
After college, I started one of Canada's first commercial electronic music studios, right down at Queen and Spadina. And it was a very small space. The room was not bigger than where we are right now.
This is a huge space for listeners. It's a very impressive space.
Oh,
I don't know what he's referring to.
Well, I'm speaking about just this little corner over
Right,
here.
okay.
Yes. So the studio was no bigger than this corner. And it was one of Canada's first commercial electronic music studios.
Wow.
So we only did electronic music. So I did music for soundtracks and recording artists and music for commercials and so on. But when everybody went home, I did my real work. And this was to experiment with vibration.
Oh, I'm quaking in my boots now. He said the V word.
I would invite my friends to be my guinea pigs. And indeed, everybody had very strange experiences. Something happens when we manipulate energy and we fill an enclosed space with particular types of sustained vibrations. We don't get this, for example, if we put in a funky beat. And there's a reason for this. I'll use an analogy here. We take a pot filled with water. We take this pot and we place it on the flame on the stove. If we measure the temperature of the flame, it's going to be quite hot, 300, 400 degrees. Now, we place our pot of water on top of the flame. We can still keep our hand, even though right underneath there's a flame of 300, 400 degrees. We can easily keep our hand inside the water for quite some time. Why? Because just next to it, we could be very severely burned. The reason we can do this is because of the energy exchange equation. When we place our pot of water onto the stove, we begin to transfer energy from the fire into the water. But this requires time. This requires a certain amount of energy to be transferred to stimulate the molecules of water so that first that they heat up, that they begin to boil, and that they evaporate. So there is a change of state, of material state. We transform matter.
Alchemy.
Alchemy. So water turns from solid to gas, from visible to invisible, through a sustained transfer of energy.
I like where you're going, just for the record.
So imagine what would happen if we do this
with sound.
With sound and a person.
You could cook a person with sound.
You could. You could. So other than the several nice dinners that we had, I realized that we could use these sounds to evoke specific reactions, physiological reactions in the body. Very pleasurable ones, very painful ones, very strange ones. We could also induce perceptual reactions where people would all of a sudden just feel very sad or feel euphoric or begin to hallucinate. And the reason this happens is when we transfer this energy, we not only have a physical reaction, but we also have a psychological reaction. And this is the field of psychoacoustics, the study of the physiological and psychological effects of sound.
Which is why we would cry more in a movie like E.T., because the soundtrack's going and it's telling us to cry right now.
How many times have we sat at home late at night watching a horror movie, and just when the scary part comes, what do we do to be less scared? We turn off the sound, right? And instantly, the film is no longer scary. Studies that were done in this, we go back to 1934 now.
Again, before Star Wars.
A little bit before Star Wars. We had, at that time, the largest study ever done on sound, even to this day, by two scientists who work at Bell Labs, Fletcher and Munson. They're responsible for the famous Fletcher-Munson perception curves.
They're clearly famous in some circles.
No, everybody sees this. When you read technical specifications on any piece of
Okay.
audio equipment, you have your curves, your audio response curves.
I mean, I've seen pictures of curves in musical manuals and stuff, but I didn't know that was the name of it. Fletcher-Munson.
So what is, this is it's called a frequency response curve. And what this curve actually represents is our perception of sound, because there are some frequencies that we perceive as being louder than other frequencies. So even though we had equipment and we project the sound at the same level, the same volume, we would perceive the sound very differently.
Wow. And I guess if it was, say, a book for a dog, the curves would look different because a dog perceives sound different
Completely
from us.
differently.
Or a cat.
Yes.
Or a bat or something.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
Just keeping it real for myself over here.
So the study that was done here by Fletcher and Munson, they studied over 100,000 people. In this study, they discovered that, first of all, human perception and sound was not linear. So we do not perceive sound linearly. Secondly, we perceive things that don't exist, meaning frequency components that we cannot measure with audio testing equipment. Our brain fills in something, in fact, that's not actually there.
Like what? What do you mean that's not actually there?
Certain frequencies, when we combine certain frequencies or certain tones together, our ear will interpret things that actually are not present. There are many different techniques of this.
Is this kind of like similar to what I've read about binaural beats, for example, where you play?
Absolutely.
So you play two frequencies, and whatever the difference in number, your brain will make that
This
up.
is what you will hear.
Okay.
Exactly. So this is the basis of binaural beats. This is the basis of phase cancellation. So we perceive things that don't exist. Things that exist we don't perceive. This is also interesting. You know, the whole MP3 format is based very heavily based on human perception. It compresses sounds in a way that actually, it's not a question of compressing data, it's a question of tricking our brains to believe that all the information, all the recorded information is actually present when it's actually not.
Wow. How do they even do that? And how did they find out? What is it, these guys, this Fletcher and Munson?
This has been a field of study since the 1930s. So there were many things that were discovered by these studies.
By these two famous characters.
The way that we perceive sound. Secondly, the fact that sound has a physiological effect. So it increases heart rate and breathing, or it can lower it. We can constrict muscles, or we can relax muscles with sound.
Is that as in ultrasound? Is that?
No, just normal.
Just with normal
audible,
music sound.
audible sound. If you observe children in a room, for example, and you put on some funky music, what happens naturally?
They start to dance.
Yes.
They animate.
Exactly. So there is something in our inherent biological system naturally that makes us move to music, or that makes us run away. Because sound is the only sense that we have that is active 24/7. Even when we sleep, our auditive system is active. And again, this is part of our survival mechanism. So even in deep sleep, if somebody comes into the room, instantly this will send a signal for us to wake up. And another thing that was discovered was emotions are evoked by sounds. And part of this is a learned response. And this is why today when we go to watch big budget Hollywood films, we listen to soundtracks. And I challenge anybody to put on the last 10 blockbuster action movies and analyze the soundtrack. What will you find?
I would think a lot of pounding music.
Yes. Very similar sounding music, right?
Kind of like, they even coin a term for it, don't they? Like trailer music and,
Yes.
What's the word? Epic.
Epic music.
Epic
Yes,
music.
exactly. Yeah. So we have the big explosions,
Yes.
the booms, we have the crashes, we have the whooshes, which are signature sounds not to any specific movie, but to a specific emotion. This is when there is a emotional release in the film. This is when there is a resolution to a tense situation. We have a specific type of sound, a specific type of musical progression, a specific type use of instrumentation.
Yeah, the famous Hitchcock in the shower, and the Jaws as well.
Exactly. It was interesting because as these are the classic movies that developed this technique, which today is basically, we can call it formula soundtracks. For example, in the soundtrack for one of the scariest films of all time, The Exorcist. Why was it so scary?
Probably because it had really scary music.
It had very scary sounds because just underneath our level of perception were sounds that were recorded in abattoirs.
Oh, wow.
Okay, of animals being slaughtered.
Oh, gosh.
And this was mixed with the dialogue. This was mixed with the underlying music. So just underneath our level of perception, there was a creepiness.
Yeah.
And again, things that we don't perceive directly, consciously, we perceive subconsciously. We perceive on a subtle, in a very subtle manner. So sound can be very, very powerful. We take the scene in Alien, we take the scene in any movie, and if we change the soundtrack, so imagine a chase scene in Alien, but we replace the music with disco, or replace it with Benny Hill. Exactly. It becomes a comedy. Right. It becomes just a complete farce and comedy. So in fact, sound evokes emotions and makes the film portray portray this emotional impact that it actually does. So sound plays a very important role. Sound is vibration. So we now take it to a different level and we speak about vibration. For the last 30 years, I've been developing something. Put a lot of time, a lot of effort into this. And that is understanding the vibrations of biological systems. I have developed a series of technologies that enable us to capture these signals. Kind of, we can almost say a sort of microphone for biological signals.
Wow.
And this is the famous machine called the Bioscope. And I have been studying this phenomena for many, many years just to try to understand, what does this mean? What do these signals mean? When we scan a plant, when we scan human cells, for example, and we see that the vibration of cancer cells is not the same as the normal cells, when the vibration of AIDS virus is not at all resembling, vibrations of other types of viruses that are inside the cells. So looking at this phenomena, I discovered that, in fact, biological tissue vibrates. And according to its vibration, but if we take and analyze this vibration, we can characterize the quality of this biological tissue or entire biological system. So we're not limited to just studying cell samples in a laboratory. We can literally go out to the field or outside in the yard here and test this tree. And we can pick up the vibrational signal of the entire tree, not just a part of it. And this is really interesting because not only do we pick up the vibration of the tree, we can pick up the way that this tree modulates this vibration when we approach the tree.
Wow. So you can recognize awareness.
And this is very cool.
Yeah.
Because we see this in plants. In plants is interesting because they don't have any sort of central nervous system. So we assume that they have no perception, no awareness. I have posted some images on a Facebook page that I have, the Pier Bioscope. And there I even have some images of experiments that were done at CERN in Switzerland. So the world's most fantastic center for quantum research and research in physics, employing some over 10,000 of the world's greatest physicists and scientists and biologists and biochemists and so on.
Did you go to the Large Hadron Collider?
Yes, I did.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
They are just some 30, 40 miles from where I live. Wow. So it's just in the neighborhood. But we did a number of experiments there at CERN on plants, and there was no explanation of what we observed directly, what everybody in the room watching the screen observed when we did things with plants.
Wow.
So this was very interesting.
I mean, what sort of things were they doing? What did you notice?
Well, for example, we put electrodes and we connect them to the top of a plant. We found a plant that nobody had watered for a long time. So this would stress the plants. Mm-hmm. And the plants go into a dormant mode when there is a drought. They just don't develop. It's like they fall into a deep sleep, a deep coma.
A hibernate.
Yes. So what we did is we watered the plant, but the electrode is on top of the plant. So there is absolutely no way possible that if we water the pot, the earth that the plant is in, that we could instantaneously observe a signal on top of the plant. Because by the time the whole biological process begins, and by the time that the water is absorbed, and there's the whole cascade of biological processes that begin to happen to bring this molecule of water way up to the top of the plant, this will take at least 20 minutes, 30 minutes. When we water this plant, we observe the change in energy state, in vibrational state, instantly. Another experiment, we turn on a flame. It does not touch the plant.
Did you terrorize a plant?
Yes, I did. The plant reacts instantly.
Wow.
So we see that there is perception.
Yeah, there's awareness.
And there is awareness in plants. But it cannot be explained by using the terminology and the definitions that we have today. Awareness, this is due to certain processes in the brain, which assumes that we have central nervous systems, which assumes that there are certain biochemical processes going on across neurons, etc., because we don't have any of this in plants. But we see that plants are aware. If we place another plant in proximity of the first plant, we will see not only that the plant becomes aware that there is another plant in its proximity, but if we take our electrodes and we scan around the plant, we will see that the plant actually projects an energy, like an energy beam, towards the other plant.
To try and communicate.
Yes.
To have a chat.
Absolutely. So we see this in nature. It suffices just to go to take a walk through the forest. Sometimes we can go to a garden center and, they'll say, these plants work well together, but don't ever put plant X next to plant Y. So this is kind of knowledge for people who work with plants. We don't necessarily explain it, technically why this happens.
Right.
But it has to do with the energy exchange between the plants. In the forest, we will see sometimes certain plants, certain trees are moving away from other plants or other types of trees. And sometimes they're being attracted by these other trees.
I remember my dad telling me once in our garden in Canada that we had a tree and another little tree started to grow underneath. And he said that the big tree shifted its branches to shade over the other one so that it wouldn't get the sun and wouldn't thrive.
Yes.
There was an intelligence there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this has been observed, this has been noted by mankind over the last many thousands of years. this energy exchange, this vibration, we have another name for it as it relates to humans. This is what we call this is the famous chi, the prana, the kundalini, the vital force, the aura, the life force. Every culture, we can look at any human culture. Every single human culture speaks of this, irregardless of their level of, let's say, technological development, whether they had huge pyramids or buildings and cities, or whether they lived as nomads in jungles and forests and on the plains, Great Plains of the United States and Canada. But they all speak of this. So there was something that was perceived, the shining, the subtle connection. We have all perceived this. I guarantee that if we do a query of 100 people, 99 of them will say, yes, I have had the experience at least one time in my life where I felt somebody staring at me in the subway, in the restaurant, in a line, and I turned my head, and sure enough, somebody is staring at me. Observe next time you drive on the freeway, observe the driver in front of you. You're traveling at 120 kilometers an hour. And the moment that you focus your attention on the driver in front or to the side, he will turn his head. This was actually a big problem that has been facing physics for a long time. It was discovered at the turn of last century. As scientists began working with quantum physics, they realized that the experimenter actually could influence the result of an experiment. So, this is kind of strange. If I anticipated that the electron will go to the left, he went to the left. If I anticipated he was going to go to the right, he went to the right. And this perplexed scientists. How is this possible? How is it possible that not only can I influence the result, but I can actually have somebody else influence me on the result? So if the person is negative, I will have a negative result.
Wow.
If the person is positive, I will have a positive result.
In this experiment, because this comes up a lot, this experiment, was there also where it was actually a wave until the person looked at it?
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's when it collapsed and became a particle.
This continues to be a big question in physics, the wave-particle duality. Is reality a wave or is it a particle? It apparently is a wave until somebody looks at it, somebody interacts with it, at which point it's like it freezes and there's like a freeze frame and we see this reality around us. But the moment we let go, it just dissolves into this wave reality. You know, today for any scientific experiment to be valid, we need to have a double-blind study. And what does that mean? That means the person carrying out the experiment has no idea what is in what box. The person instructing that person has no idea what is in what box. But there is a third person removed who knows what the experiment is about, who gives the instructions to the next person, who gives the instructions to the final person doing the experiments. So the double-blind study, very important, and every scientific paper, every scientific study is dependent on the double-blind study.
Have they done this with the particle wave situation, the double-blind thing? It would seem fairly obvious.
Fairly obvious, but it's inconclusive. So we have here a situation that we are able to influence reality. So the power of positive thinking, it's a physical reality. You can physically alter, you can physically influence things. Now, it doesn't work how many most people think, because I will say, I wish to move this pencil from point A to point B. So if I try to imagine I would like to move my couch from this side of the room to that side of the room, it doesn't work on that level.
You're not a super Kreskin.
It works, not a super Kreskin, no. It works on a much subtler level. It works on the other phenomena that are also wave-based. So I can influence a plant. And there are many experiments that have been done. For example, to one plant, every day I take care of it. I say hello to it. I say I love you. To the other plant, I water it as well. But I don't pay attention to it.
You're a bit of a jerk to the other plant.
Yeah, you're a bit of a jerk. What happens? We find that the plant that we're being jerks to, they are stunted in their growth. They develop more readily that they develop diseases or insect infestations. And this is interesting because the ones that we say, oh, I really like you, I love you, and so on, it thrives. So there is some sort of exchange of subtle energy that happens. The Bioscope allows us to measure this subtle energy.
Now, is this a gadget that you created, this
Yes.
Bioscope?
Yes,
So
it
it's
is.
totally your thing.
Yes.
That's very clever.
Yes. That's been now more than 20 years.
And is there just one, or are they in production around the world kind of thing?
So I have been working in secret for the last 13 years in my cave in Switzerland.
40 miles from CERN.
It's 40 miles from CERN, yeah. And I've been refining the Bioscope. I'm just about to release the new generation. The first generation, we've been working on validation. So I've been working with universities, with institutes, with large companies in their research departments. I've worked with a national research center in France, national laboratory in the Netherlands, who actually published a paper with the water quality testing with the Bioscope.
Wow.
I worked with the genetics department at the University of Zagreb in Croatia. I worked with an institute in Japan. And I've worked with some major companies also, studying this phenomena of under, quote unquote, subtle energy.
Yeah, yeah.
We see that we can influence water with mechanical treatments that change the way that the chemical reactions occur if we use this water as opposed to non-treated water.
I think I've just seen, coincidentally, an example of this week. I went and was very privileged to have a tour of the Aurosoma laboratory out in Tetford. And they make these, there's one on my table, but listeners can't see. They're dual-coloured bottles. And I was drawn to these when I saw them in the shop. They're energetic oils, basically, oil and water in there. And what they do to these oils and water, you wouldn't even believe the thought that's gone into it. I mean, they pass them by crystals. They have so many layers of energetics that they put them through. And one of them is a system with the water. And literally just 3-4 days ago, I was hearing about this same thing. And they've got this very expensive gadget that will make the water go in a vortex.
Okay.
And after the vortex, it will then even go through copper piping that has been rifled to look kind of like a screw thread, so that the water will have to go through this movement. So they were just telling me how this then makes the water react differently in our bodies and energetically. And this is what you're saying.
Absolutely. So this can be objectively measured. This can be objectively observed. As we would measure the amount of electricity coming into our home with a meter, we can use the Bioscope to measure exactly the change of electrical information, not chemical information. It's still water. So it's still the same water, but its electrical configuration is what we measure with the Bioscope. The plant, it's still the plant. Nothing has changed, but I can observe its electrical reactions.
That's amazing. And how and why does this impact us? If we drink this water that's gone on a special kind of typhoon, what do you call it? That shape, the vortex sort of a shape, like when you empty your bathtub and it spins in a tornado shape.
This has to do with vibration. Vibration is the opposite of chaos. We can say that. I do this very, very, very roughly. Chaos is what? Chaos is potential. Chaos is nothing. Chaos is everything. And the moment I begin to move this potential, So I begin to polarize potential. What does that mean? That means I create an up and a down. I create a left and a right. I create a positive and a negative, a 1 and a 0, a north and a south. I create duality. I am disturbing my nothingness. And now I have different intensities. So I can have a lot of positive and a lot of negative. If I put on 1,000, if I say it's 1,000 volts, or if I use an electromagnet of 3 Tesla or more, something that we would use at CERN or something that would be used in an MRI machine, for example. This is a huge amount of north and south poleness. So we move potential, and when we do that, we create vibration. So now we have different parameters, different qualities then that this vibration takes shape. One of those parameters is amplitude, the amount of displacement of potential, or the amount of energy that we are moving, because finally everything is energy. And we here go to the famous E equals mc squared formula, Einstein's formula that equates energy to mass and mass to energy. So the two are convertible. So when we have a vibration, we move energy. Different vibration can be mechanical, it can be electromagnetic, it could be sound, it could be chemical. We have chemical potential, chemical vibrations we can induce by mixing substances together, by heating substances, by cooling substances. We can put them into active vibrational states. So water that undergoes a certain physical process, how could this possibly affect us? Well, first of all, we need to understand the nature of water. Water is a very interesting substance. It is a bipolar molecule, which means it has a north pole and a south pole, like little tiny magnets. And you know what happens when you approach a magnet with another magnet. If they're equal poles, they will reject. If they're opposite poles, they will attract. So imagine your glass of water. If I put a magnet close to it, all of my molecules will align their ends, their positive ends, towards a negative magnet, negative charge.
They'll stand like a troop.
Yes. So this is if I use a magnet. I could also use electrical charge, so the north end of a battery, and I can put it into a glass of water. I will have the molecules of water align themselves towards the electrode that I have placed into the water. Now, I will pass water through a vortex. This is now a physical process. When I pass water through a vortex, I put it in motion. Not only that, I apply pressure, and as I compress water, for example, what I will do is I will also compress the molecules further together, or I will pull them further apart. So as water is moving through a vortex, and generally we have a difference in diameter of these devices.
They tend to look like a bit like an hourglass, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's an inverted bottle mirroring the same underneath.
Exactly. So now, as the water physically goes through this, the changes in pressure will allow the molecules to be more compressed or more pulled apart. And as we do this, the electrical charge, we will influence the electrical charge. So we will create electrical current inside the process. Via this process, we will generate electrical current. It is a similar thing that happens when we play sound. We're moving molecules, we're compressing them, we're pulling them apart. Well, physical process does the same thing, maybe not at the same rate as a sound wave, but nonetheless, it compresses and decompresses the physical structure, and this generates flux. So the moment we move the water, we're generating waves. And these waves can be captured by the substance. So water that is treated, we will see, we can measure, again, using the Bioscope, we take water, we treat it, We can see exactly the differences in its electrical structure.
Wow.
We've not done anything chemically, but we see that electrically it's not the same substance.
You've just sent it on a trip, basically.
Yes. And we have informed it. Now, we drink this water. What happens when we drink a glass of water?
Well, you consume this whole charge that's in the glass of water, I guess.
So if we look at what happens when we drink a glass of water, when we eat an apple, the substance enters our stomach. It reacts with the gastric acids. Now, when you put these substances together, anything that comes into contact with an acid, a very specific thing will happen. If we were to look at what actually is happening, we will see that there is a transfer of electrons or protons from one substance towards another. When enough electrons and protons have been displaced, we have a transformation in the material, and this we call a chemical reaction. So at its very fundamental basis, any chemical reaction is a transfer of energy, a transfer of electrons and protons. We're putting them somewhere or we're taking them away, and as we take them away, like a house of cards, the molecules and the substance, the protein, collapses, or we build upon it as we would place bricks one on top of another when we're building a skyscraper. So the entire field of chemistry is in fact constructing and deconstructing energy by moving electric charge.
Just throwing things in or out of balance,
Yes.
adding more or taking away.
That's right. So then, of course, there are different configurations, different forms, different geometries, different weights and masses and so on that differentiate silicon from iron, sulfur from cobalt, etc. But fundamentally, when we look at at the process, it is a movement of energy.
And so when this charged water goes into our body, though, I mean, what is the actual benefit of that, of drinking charged water?
We have two types of vibrations in our bodies. One, we measure in the terahertz, gigahertz, terahertz. These are the vibrations of our chemistry.
It's pretty darn fast.
It's super fast, yes.
Like beyond the speed of lighty fast? And that's a technical term, by the way, the speed of lighty.
The speed of lighty, yes, even beyond beyond the speed of lighty. Again, we have to put things in context, and it's a question of scale and measurement. So we just won't get into this subject right now.
Okay. In my imagination, my whole body's going at the speed of light.
Technically, according to most scientists, we cannot have anything that's moving faster than the speed of light. However, there are certain situations, we have some indication that there are certain things that potentially can be moving faster than the speed of light. It is a question of developing the tools to perceive this.
Right.
It's really about that. Do we have the instruments that are sensitive enough that are able to push the frontiers of what we are actually able to perceive?
Yeah.
Imagine the first time that people looked under the microscope.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Imagine yourself, here we are in the Middle Ages, or just after the Middle Ages, and somebody has just brought this device that we look at a sample of some water from the pond. What do we see? We see monsters and demons and dragons and devils inside. It's horrific. It's terrible. No, these weren't monsters and demons and dragons. These were microorganisms. But it was the first time ever that mankind could perceive this, because with the naked eye, we cannot see these little tiny bugs and creatures that are swimming around and crawling all over us all the time.
I'm sure somebody burned at the stake because of this.
I am
Probably
sure.
a woman.
Probably a woman.
Yeah.
Probably 5 women.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the trend back then. It was very fashionable.
Right.
Today, we are no further. Well, we're a little bit further ahead, but there are still things that we cannot perceive.
The coolest thing, though, on the microscope front, I think right now, is the whole atom debunking that they used to think that was an actual solid particle of the atom. But then they got better microscopes And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is it not that now you go in with that giant, powerful microscope and discover that, in fact, what was supposed to be a solid atom is just a bunch of parcels of energy just going around and also coming into and out of existence, disappearing and reappearing?
Absolutely. And this is the whole field of quantum physics, which is extremely complex science. I mean,
I understand it all, Pierre. I understand everything about quantum physics.
The principles.
Ask me anything.
The principles here are beyond most people's comprehensions. So we read articles meant for the general public. This only gives us just a simple scratch on the surface. And it's true. What we imagined was reality is not. And even today, when we really look at deeply some of the experiments being done at CERN, we realize that even the things that we thought was not reality, we begin to question everything. You know, there are some people who are now questioning the whole Big Bang theory because of certain results and experiments that are being done. If this is the case, well, then we should start from scratch with every single science book ever written. We have to ask ourselves the question, and here I think we come into a more human issue, and that is we make certain assumptions that we are really smart. So when I speak with many technical people and scientists and professors, and they have this air of superiority. We understand everything there is to know, like back in the end of the 19th century, where they made an announcement, you know, we should just close the patent office because everything that ever could be invented was already invented. So everything that could possibly be discovered, we know and we understand. No, we don't know. We don't know 1% of 1%, actually.
Right.
So in 500 years from today, if there are any humans left...
Got a little bit of construction for any listeners. Hopefully won't be going on long.
Vibration.
Yeah, that is
there we go.
Right on cue. An example of a vibration.
Absolutely. So when we look back 500 years from now, our most modern technologies, our most modern science will look very quaint and primitive.
Barbaric.
And very barbaric, yes. So if we compare, we walk into a surgical room of the 16th century compared to the most modern room today, we are shocked. We're shocked by the tools. We're shocked by the techniques. We're shocked by just this very basic understanding of anatomy and biology.
They said to give 10 minutes because they've put a new light up.
Oh. And after 10 minutes it'll shut? Okay. Well, that's at least good to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Because, I mean, we don't need the example of the vibrations anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this all the time of how kind of dumb our civilization actually is, but everybody operates, as you say, with this sense that we're so smart because we're the ones in 2016 and we look back on other civilizations as though they were the primitives, and yet there's so much evidence that they had civilizations lasting thousands of years. Well, our own personal civilization isn't thousands of years because it keeps crumbling when things go wrong, you know?
At the rate that we're going, I'm not sure we will last another 100 years.
Right, exactly. And then you look at, you know, people like the Egyptians who really had some longevity, you know, artifacts, thousands and thousands of years of civilization, of people living together without just slaughtering each other.
This is absolutely true. Absolutely true. How about health? We all get sick. We all have pains. We all have discomfort, either after a bad night out or eating at some horrific restaurant or falling off a bike. The way that we approach health today we imagine the body as a mechanical device. No different than a car, no different than a machine. While it's true that we have certain mechanical aspects to our body, we also have something else, and we've forgotten that we have this something else. I'll come back to this in a moment. In understanding these vibrations that we can detect in biological systems, I have looked at what science has to say about this. What were the references that I could use to
base your own studies
to validate and to validate to base my own studies on, to delve deeper into certain subjects. And I found some very nice references. Some of those references are published by NASA. So in their human specification manual, which is distributed to their suppliers, so everyone who's making chairs and joysticks and switches and headsets and so on has access to this information. But, they have a whole chapter dedicated to the effects of vibration on the body. Not just physiological reactions, but also psychological reactions. Ability to concentrate, ability to think clearly, the ability to communicate. So we see that certain vibrations completely cut our abilities to perceive things the way that normally we would want astronauts to perceive things. So one of my references is all the literature I could find on these subjects, mechanical influences on the body, vibrotactility, so our capacity to sense vibration, not only through the ears, but through the body. We sense vibrations through the floor, so we have sensors, mechanoreceptors in our nervous system that are able to pick up subtle vibrations through our bodies, not just only our ears. And I looked at also then traditional methods, because as I was studying this field of chi and prana, kundalini, and so on, what fascinated me was that we have all these different cultures who speak about this subtle energy, or this energy, this life force, this light inside living things. We even portray in Christianity, for example, we look at the images of saints and we see this halo around the head, right? So what does this represent? This represents the light. This represents the emanation of energy, of consciousness, of something very subtle. In Chinese mythology, in Tibetan mythology, we have concepts of the rainbow body. So a person who is in perfect vitality or balanced vitality will emanate a rainbow body. We've heard people say, oh, I can read auras, and yours is blue, yours is green, yours is violet. Well, this is wrong, because this means that the person is actually imbalanced. The balanced aura, the balanced person will emanate a rainbow body. So will emanate a white aura, will emanate all the colors of the spectrum.
Which make white.
Which make white, exactly. So in the 16th century, a very interesting book was compiled. It was based on medical traditions that even predate Buddhism. So the Bon tradition, which was a collection of indigenous peoples that lived...
did you say?
B-O-N, Bon.
Oh, Bon, the Bon, okay.
And these were indigenous peoples that lived around Tibet, northern India. There wasn't a specific geographical area, so it covers quite a large extent. And these were ancient wisdoms related to health and well-being that were published in a book that was called the Blue Barrel Treatise. And it was one of the first medical books that was written. And in it, a person is represented as a tree that has two trunks with common roots one trunk represents all of the tangible aspects, the physical aspects, our body, what we can see and touch and hear and see, what we can taste. And the second trunk represents all the intangible, our dreams, our aspirations, our phantasms, our creativity, all the things that surround us that we don't see, but yet influence us anyways. Ultraviolet waves. We don't perceive this. We don't see this. Radiation.
Wi-Fi.
Yes. So these are aspects, subtle aspects. And within this tree, we have a flow of light, of colors, and a balance and vitality and health was present when the balance between the flow of the tangible and intangible was harmonized. And the moment that we have disturbances and imbalance on one side, this can manifest as problems on the other side. So if we take this into a more human concrete or more concrete example, it means that if somebody has an emotional anguish that they're living through, this can directly influence a physiological process in their body. It could manifest as pain. It could manifest as bad digestion. It could manifest as tension in the back. And the same thing also on the other side. If we cause damage to a physical part of our body, this can manifest as a emotional or as a psychological problem as well.
That's interesting. I've never thought of it happening in reverse. I've heard a lot about the whole stress and thoughts and bad experiences can manifest physically in things like cancer, as serious as that, or just hypertension and chemical things happening with your body. But I haven't thought of it the other way. So you're saying, for example, I mean, coincidentally, this morning at the gym, I was watching a documentary and they were saying that emotions are connected to the lungs. And if somebody has a lung ailment, it can tie in that they've had emotional traumas. So you're saying that if you got like a lung infection, it might give you the sense of emotional traumas when in fact you didn't actually experience them.
Yes, very true. Very true.
So this is well worth taking note of then, you know, because you could be giving yourself problems emotionally that in fact you've never lived through. There's no logical reason that you should experience anger or fear or, you know, depression. And in fact, you've got something physically wrong with you.
Absolutely.
Wow. So that's just blowing my brain a little bit because I've never heard of the reverse of it. You know, wow.
We can observe this interaction between the concrete and the subtle, and the subtle and the concrete. So we have tools now that enable us to observe this.
Wow.
And this is Bioscope. So this is now for the last...
Oh, there we go again. But we know they're almost finished because we got the update. I guess because it's Saturday. Imagine what it's like here in the week, though.
Oh.
I mean, this is a noisy place. Talk about making movies. You got giant trucks hurtling by with spaceships on them. Okay. And I apologize if it comes on again, but at least we know he's going to be finished soon.
In a few minutes, yeah.
And maybe we'll start crying and we'll understand why. Because there's a physical thing happening above us with a big vibration.
Yeah. Okay, so the Bioscope. The Bioscope allows us to observe these subtle and global fields that exist around all living organisms and, in fact, all biological matter.
Wow.
After observing these signals for a long time, after looking at cancer and after looking at horrific viruses and after looking at diseases in plants and animals and after even testing people who were just ranging in a spectrum from some top athletes to people just days before death, I discovered something quite interesting. And that is that plants, animals, and people, the quality of their vibration, their electrical vibration, is directly related to the state of vitality and health. Directly. What we see in plants, animals, and people who are approaching death, we see that their field is collapsing. And what we see in fresh plants, tomatoes just picked off the vine, beautifully ripe, we see that there is a structure, there's a richness in this information. When we see somebody in good health, a perfectly healthy child, a happy child, and my own children actually were my big guinea pigs.
Well, don't you think that people a long, long time ago already knew this information? And that's why in our vernacular, we have words like, oh, look how vibrant that person is.
Absolutely.
And why, here's my biggest question as to why I think ancient people knew all of this. Why do you knock on a solid surface and say, is it sound? Where did that come from?
Yes. How many times do we say, oh, this person has a bad vibe?
Right. It struck a chord with me.
Yes, absolutely. So relating to vibration, sound is just a very direct and immediate expression of this. It's something that we can perceive instantly, and everybody can universally perceive sound. It's much more difficult to perceive electromagnetic vibrations. It's much more difficult to perceive subsonic or ultrasonic vibrations. Some people can do it. In fact, we can all be trained to perceive this. It's just like muscles who have atrophied because we never really had a chance to use them.
And nobody's told us they're there to use.
Yes, absolutely. We learn to play the piano. We learn to play a guitar. We learn to sing. We learn a language. So we develop exercises and techniques to perceive these phenomena which surround us all the time. This is a knowledge, I believe, and a technique that we have greatly lost. And I think a lot of it has been wiped out from human experience.
Right.
Here we get into systems of beliefs. These are bad beliefs. Why? Because you don't believe the same thing that I do. And I believe that the world should work like this, which means I'm the chief and you listen to what I say. So as long as we're okay with this, everybody's good. But the moment you disagree with me, off with your heads.
Right.
And how many instances of this do we see even in today's society?
Yeah.
Horrific stuff. Based on what? Based on belief systems.
Go to Glastonbury and you look at the shell of what was the most beautiful church at the time that had been built, Glastonbury Abbey, and they called it the Dissolution because the king didn't like that line of church. He wanted his own new line, so he just killed all the monks and smashed down the abbey.
Yes, for example, we have many examples like this throughout history where certain concepts, certain designs, certain fashions, certain flavors just didn't jive with people in control, people in charge. And this has led to tremendous suffering and bloodshed and loss and destruction and
torture. I mean, you get the classic, what they would term as a witch, but really when you break it down, you've got some women growing little herbs and boiling them, making teas, which even probably would have been tremendously medicinal and helpful, but because it wasn't understood by other people, they're burned and they're drowned.
If we look at this dark period of European history, we see that superstition was very prevalent in day to day. A lot of this was in fact related to the development of Christianity. So, in fact, it was only God who could heal us. If you had a problem with your child, you would have to pray. You would have to go to the church and by the benediction of the bishop, of the priest, etc. We would ask God to intervene to heal your child. But I went down to a little hut over there, Madame Olga, and she took some plants that she had prepared, that she has cooked, And she gave this to the child, and the child got better. But wait. Where is God in the equation? This cannot work like this, because you're demonstrating that, in fact, you're taking power away from God, and this is bad. And we, as the representatives of His Holy Majesty, we can't let this happen. So, how many millions of women across Europe were tortured horrifically and burned and drowned and decapitated, etc. It's horrific. It's a very dark period of...
and all the wisdom, imagine, that went with them.
Of course.
That they knew the exact proportions of little thistle this and herb this that would get rid of your headache just from a cup of tea, you know.
Yes. And we call this, grandmother's medicine.
Right, old wives' tales.
Old wives' tales. But many of them were just common sense, because people realized that when there was a problem, we could take an action that could evoke a positive reaction. So just plain logic. Action leads to reaction. And if we know what this action should be, we can anticipate a certain positive reaction on the other end. I mean, this is no different today when we take a medicine. We are evoking a certain action through a specific molecule that we hope will create a positive reaction in the individual who is taking this medication. For some individuals, this works. For other individuals, it doesn't work. And yet for other individuals, this makes them a lot worse.
I mean, how do pills fit in with the vibrational scheme of things? You know, they're tiny little white pills. They've obviously got a vibration.
Yes.
Where is the information coming from?
Transfer of energy. We spoke about this earlier. When this enters the digestive system, we begin an entire process of movement of energy, of release of molecules and their interactions with other molecules inside the body. So some of them can be targeted, but generally they cannot. So we cannot deliver medication to a specific part of the body. We cannot deliver medication to only the one part of the body where we have a tumor, for example. When we take pills, it goes everywhere. So it means it's in our feet, it's in our lungs, it's in our muscles, it's in our brain, it's in our eyes, it's in our ears.
Right.
And it is simply because of this, when we look at the contraindications on the backs of medicines.
It's a Bible.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have so many bad things that can happen if I take this medication. It can give me heart problems, and it can give me emotional problems, and it can give me, hearing problems and sight problems and so on. It's horrific. Why? Because when we take any type of substance, it goes everywhere. So it does some goods on one side, but we always have a price to pay.
Right, a side effect.
A side effect, yeah.
With something I would imagine, and I've never actually experienced acupuncture, but I understand the sort of logic of it, that they're operating on the energetic meridians through the body. I would imagine, logically, that is actually able to target exact locations in your body, because they can pinpoint the centers where those little energies tie into, right?
This is based on an ancient culture and an ancient method that has been tried and tested over many, many centuries. Chinese medicine, acupuncture is extremely complex. They are working on the so-called meridians or energy channels of the body using a very traditional approach, a very traditional technique. So they can achieve results through this technique that go beyond the use of chemical substances, because the electrical phenomena in the body is a little bit like the terrain. If I have good earth and I water it and it has enough sunshine, I can plant some things into my earth and I will have a good crop. If the terrain is bad, if the soil is bad, if there are too many stones, if there is toxic substances, my plants will not grow so well. So the electrical flux in the body is the terrain. And if it is in a good state, the biological processes that are built upon this terrain, that occur within this terrain, will also be positive.
Right.
And I will perpetuate organization. I will perpetuate regeneration. I will perpetuate immunity.
And is this where the water that's been in the vortex comes in? Because it has this charge that's very healthy for our body to help organize things nicely?
This is a part of the process, but it's only one aspect of a process that is much, much more complex than most people realize. We have people who speak about frequencies, and on the internet we can see miracle frequency to repair DNA, the frequency of certain bacterias and diseases. This is the resonant frequency of the lungs or of the kidneys.
Of the earth, right? 7.83 hertz, is that true?
Sort of. Let me give you an example. When people speak about frequencies, you're looking for a car and you read an ad and the ad says, I have a fantastic car for sale. You fill it up with gas once and you never have to fill it up with gas again. You can transport anything anywhere instantly. It is absolutely the most wonderful thing because you'll never need repairs. And I'm sold, right? You would be sold.
I wouldn't be, because I'd be way too skeptical. I'd be like, this is a crock.
Well, it could be a German car.
I'm not buying this car.
We could be speaking about a German car here. No, we go, we visit the man, and we say, we are ready. I want this car. This is fantastic. How did you come up with this? Where did you get this? And he takes you to the garage, and in the garage there are 4 wheels. And I say, okay, where's the rest of it? Where's the engine? Where's the body? Are there seats? Is there a steering wheel? Do we get windows with this? Is it blue? So when people speak about frequencies, they're showing you wheels, but they're not saying anything about the rest of the vehicle. So yes, there are resonances in human organs, but it's only part of the issue. That's only part of the phenomena. To illustrate this a little bit further, I will take a piano, a guitar, and a person singing, and I will have them sing the same note at the same intensity for the same duration. What is it that makes us distinguish the difference between the piano, the guitar, and someone singing? Because they're singing the same notes, so the same frequency.
The character and quality of the tone.
So that means there is something in the vibration that is much more than just frequency. Frequency is only one aspect of vibration.
Right. I get you. So a liver or a heart might be at a certain frequency, but it would have a distinguishable sound to it.
It would have a specific vibrational property.
A signature.
Another example where we take the entirety of vibration, music recorded on a CD. So our frequency, our amplitude, our waveforms, our times, everything is fixed in light. But now, if I play this CD on my headset, or I play it in the car, or I play it in a concert hall, will I have the same experience of this music? No, it will sound very different, right? So the context, even of the same vibrational information, when transposed or transplanted between people.
And environments.
And this is what we are. We are environments. Right. Every person is a unique and individual environment.
And most of us aren't concert halls.
And most of us aren't.
Most of us are the local Denny's.
We see that our bodies react to vibrations. In fact, we can say we are concert halls. In our own unique way. In our own unique way, we are all concert halls.
Okay.
And the information, vibrational information, is unique and individual for every single person. So what works with one person will not necessarily work with another person, because their resonances, not only mechanical resonances, which is only one part of our energetic system, our vibratory system. This is one aspect. So the differences in size and mass and weight and in density. This is the mechanical side. But don't forget that the moment that we open our eyes, the amount of energy involved in the thought process, in perception, in consciousness, is almost equivalent to the amount of energy required to keep our body alive, including breathing, including heartbeat, including circulation, digestion, movement of muscles, and everything else. So just in our consciousness, we use a tremendous amount of energy.
Wow. So do nerdy people use more energy then? Because they're thinking more? That is a very good question, Pierre. I don't want to see any kind of look or judgment.
We cannot have more energy or less energy. We can only move energy. We can only take energy from one part of our system and move it to another part of our system.
But I mean, do you have to eat more if you're thinking more?
Not necessarily.
If you're burning up using this extra energy from your thoughts.
Not necessarily.
Wouldn't people who think more, who are worriers and stuff, actually be using more of their electrical energies with their thoughts?
They would be using this energy at the expense of other functions and processes in their body.
Maybe your heart isn't getting enough energy because you're thinking so much.
Exactly.
Hello, stockbrokers. Listen up. You know?
Yes.
Accountants.
Absolutely.
This is a public service announcement for nerds.
We can stimulate this process. We can stimulate this process through sound. Over the last 7 years, I have developed a technique for stimulating this process in the human body. And this I call AudioVitality. It is a piece of software and a technical interface that generates a very specific sound wave. These sound waves are projected into the human body, and this enables us to organize the tissues and the electrical flows inside the body.
Wow.
Last October, we received our certification, our validation in Switzerland now.
Wow.
This is an officially recognized therapeutic method.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
In Switzerland.
That's phenomenal.
So,
to get recognition for something that you've put 30 years of your life moving towards.
It took a lot of work to get it to this point.
An incredible accomplishment.
And we are now training therapists. We have our first group who is about to finish their full training. In Switzerland, we are required to have 150 hours of training in a specialized area. We could easily teach 300 hours if we get into all the details of what this technology,
goodness, I bet.
What this technology does and,
I'm sure.
and can do.
Probably spend 100 hours on a hangover.
So actually, it's very good for hangovers. If you have a hangover, you put yourself on the bed, and we can play the sounds, and we can make this hangover disappear very quickly.
Have you experienced it firsthand?
Many times. Not the hangover, because I'm not a big drinker. But,
so is it like, did you see the movie Elysium? Or Elysium?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it like that, like a bed that you lie in?
Yes.
Because I feel that that's absolutely the future.
Absolutely.
That there's no more cutting and barbaric stabbing into the human body, that you just would lie on a bed and be exposed to different combinations of frequencies.
Very true. Very similar to that. I have had personally over 1,000 clients, and we have seen remarkable recoveries. So after trauma, I work a lot with trauma or post-trauma individuals.
Like a post-traumatic stress type thing, or more of a physical car accident?
Car accidents, sporting accidents, skiing accidents, falling out of planes accidents.
Wow.
I worked with heart surgery patients, chemotherapy, after chemotherapy. So all of these are very traumatic experiences physiologically, but not only physiologically, but also psychologically.
Yeah.
And psychologically, to be in the car accident is not only a shock, physical shock, it's also a psychological shock, an emotional shock. So I work with many trauma cases. We've seen remarkable results.
Wow.
in almost 100% of the cases, people with hypertension, after 3 sessions, their hypertension disappears.
Wow. Have you had any experience with dealing with cancer patients?
Cancer, Parkinson. And what we have been able to see so far, we have seen that we have been able to, in fact, suspend the progression of these degenerative diseases.
Wow.
I'm actually in the process of a study with a medical doctor who should have been dead 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. And we have been able to freeze the development or the progression of his cancer.
So would you say the optimal situation currently, not for the future, but currently is just the suspending progression of disease as opposed to a reversal of the disease?
We have evidence of both.
Wow.
We have evidence actually of biological markers in individuals who have had severe viral infections, hepatitis, HIV, did not express itself as AIDS. It did not express itself as cancer. However, the people who have been going for these tests for 20 years, the markers were present every year. Every time they did the blood test, the markers were there.
Wow.
Well, for the first time, we have seen and we have validated that these markers have disappeared.
Wow.
So how do we explain that after 20 years, the woman who had markers for hepatitis simply disappears from one moment to the next?
Amazing.
So her doctor sent her for 3 blood tests because he didn't believe the results.
I bet.
And she went to a different laboratory the 3rd time because he didn't trust the first laboratory anymore because he said this was impossible.
Wow. Well, good for him for doing 3 tests. He's diligent.
Yes. We had also currently a case with Parkinson, somebody I had been working with for 3 years. Right now, the official diagnosis is it may not be Parkinson. Because if it was Parkinson, it would have already taken its course and the person would be in much worse shape than she actually is today.
Wow.
So this was funny because I just had this person come to me a month ago. We do regular treatments. And so she told me, my doctor now is doubting that it's Parkinson.
Wow. I guess this is probably part of the, I'm sure, backlash you'll face in the future as you, I would imagine, inevitably do experience great curing outcomes with your equipment. And then people will say, oh, well, it wasn't actually cancer.
Yeah.
They just had the flu.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You didn't just cure it because they never had it in the first place.
That's okay. In fact, I invite validation of this. Everything I do is based on research I have done. I can show you why I've taken certain approaches, why we use certain signals, why we use the intensities that we do, why where the link is between the psychological components, the physiological components. So everything is there. I don't have a staff of 200 researchers. Most of this was developed in my living room, using my friends and family as guinea pigs.
In your secret location in Switzerland. Because let's not forget, this has been developed in secret, because that's way more exciting.
Yes.
It totally puts you on the level of an international spy, and I'm going with it. Right. I'm sure this is going to debut in Zurich, this what's the end? Scope, the Bioscope.
The Bioscope.
Do you know what's such a coincidence as well? I mean, my brain is popping. God help my poor heart right now, because all the electricity is going to my brain right now. I just also had, his episode will have posted by now, I believe, even though it hasn't exactly today, the sound make visible guy, who's the version of you, but his name's John Stewart Reed, and he has a cymoscope that he developed. Do you know of him?
I know of him. We're friends on Facebook.
Oh, my gosh.
This is cymatics.
Yeah.
This is the work of a Swiss physicist back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, a man by the name of Hans Jenny, who was a scientist, a medical doctor, who did work on making vibrations visible.
Yeah.
This is based on a previous work from the 18th century of a scientist or German mathematician called Ernst Chladni.
Right, hence of the Chladni plate fame.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Which, for listeners, basically, you can chuck a bunch of sand on a piece of metal, play a violin bow at the side of it, and right before your very eyes, the chaotic order of sand will take a geometric shape that is flawless.
Absolutely, absolutely. So vibration generates order. And we can see these magnificent geometric shapes with specific types of signals.
Yeah.
And this is a natural process. We don't fully understand how and why this happens, but it has to do with the way that matter organizes itself. And this is why molecules have the forms that they do. This is why later on, further down the line, we have crystals who have the geometries and the shapes that they do, because energy which creates matter through vibration is organized.
That was Pier Rubessa, and you guys just heard part 1. And now guess what? I have a super special treat for you. You don't even have to wait for part 2. I know I couldn't. I'd be like, where's the fantastical tale? Where's the crazy shit with the hashtag extraterrestrial? Well, don't fret, Earthlings. Get yourself back to thegreyescape.com or iTunes and get it, because it's already there waiting for you. Trust me, you're going to want to know what happened to this guy. I'm not even going to do the usual end of the show blurb. Just get over to thegreyescape.com. Don't forget thegreyescape.com/cash for some free international money transfers. And let's get to the fantastical tale. I'm going to trust that you're going to go there right now for part 2. So all I have to say is thank you guys for listening. And I'll be right back right after this.